Among their generation they had all seen a racing cartoon called Initial D. Although there was NTR in the cartoon and the main character was the main character, it did set off a wave of discussion among their generation. This allowed them to have some understanding of racing. Moreover, he could see that Karma Cliff wanted to go very much, so Jiang Hai couldn't say anything to refuse. Seeing that Jiang Hai was a little hesitant, Baveda Jindaro also said with a smile, "Don't worry, you can go and feel the atmosphere. There is no mandatory competition there and Delia will also go. I'm going to get the car now and then pick up Delia." Hearing his words, Kelly Solon picked up her mobile phone and called Delia George. She clearly wrote it on her face that she didn't believe them. After learning that Delia would indeed go, she looked at Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai thought about it and also called Bell, telling him to be careful when he sleeps. In case something happened to Jiang Hai, he could call him directly. This was the most important thing. After confirming that Bell was also online, Jiang Hai looked at Karma Cliff. "Then let's go and have a look, but you have to be obedient. If you are not obedient, I will tell your parents." Looking at Karma Cliff, Jiang Hai said seriously. Hearing that Jiang Hai agreed, Karma Cliff naturally nodded immediately and agreed with him. "Well, let's go get the car first. See you in the parking lot at 7 o'clock. Hearing that Jiang Hai also agreed to go, Baveta Jindirat also said with a smile and then left. Watching them go to the parking lot, Jiang Hai and the others lined up again. "Have you been to this racing party before?" Turning his head and lining up again, Jiang Hai looked at Kelly Solon and asked her. "I've heard of it before but I really haven't been there. Baveta and others are very famous around here. Maybe it's also because of this competition. I'm a robot idiot, and since I was a child my father didn't let me go to dangerous places. Today I'll go with you to broaden my horizons." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kelly Solon shrugged and said indifferently. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. He knew that she was telling the truth because Kelly Solon's family should have introduced her before. She runs a flower shop. Her father, to put it bluntly, has a bit of a, her mother is also a bit timid. This was a public matter in the small town. Children who came from such a family were either more timid and autistic than them, or they were hardliners with strong self-esteem. But no matter which faction they belonged to, they would not go to such a place with a foul atmosphere. "Let's take a look. If there's nothing interesting we'll leave." Hearing Kelly Solon's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. At this time, it was also their turn at the takeout window. Jiang Hai and the others bought an original flavor, a yellow peach and a nut, and then they each ate. After taking the first bite, Jiang Hai couldn't help but nod. "This ice cream tastes really good." While eating ice cream, Jiang Hai and the others strolled around because they had an appointment with those people at 7 o'clock. Now, Baveta Jindirat is going to Winthrop to pick up Delia, and they are also going to eat. If they meet here at 7 o'clock they will probably go straight there. Jiang Hai and the others also have to have dinner here, but it can be seen that Karma Cliff, who originally came out to play very happily, has no mood to play here at this time. She is more looking forward to the competition in the evening. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai also knew that she didn't have the mood to pick anything to eat, so he casually chose an Italian restaurant. After eating steak and spaghetti they sat for a while. It was already 6:40. At Karma Cliff's urging, Jiang Hai and Kelly Solon also went to the parking lot. When they arrived outside the parking lot, they found that Baveta Jindirat and Jack Kim had been waiting here for a long time. Among them, beside Baveta Jindirat's car, was Delia George, whom Jiang Hai was very familiar with. He even knew the depth of Delia. When she saw Jiang Hai come over, she waved happily. "Hey Delia, is your work done today?" Looking at Delia George, Jiang Hai said to her. "Well, there's nothing fun to do at night in Winthrop. The tourists have all gone to bed." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia George also said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled and said a few words to her casually. Baveta Jindirat on this side coughed dryly, indicating that everyone was about to set off. Jiang Hai and the others did not say much. They directly got in the car and drove out of the city. Boston was originally a small place. When the city was first planned, although it was more important than New York, it had been built for a long time. The structure was small to begin with. If it wasn't for the fact that it was a large metropolitan area, it would just be a town. After driving for less than half an hour, they had already arrived at the suburbs. According to the Chinese language, this is called the urban-rural fringe. However, there are not so many people in the United States. The urban-rural fringe is still quite desolate. There is a half of a road here with few people. But it has to be admitted that the Americans did a good job in their infrastructure. This half of the road has a history of almost 20 or 30 years. It has been abandoned for almost 5 or 6 years. Although the road is a bit old, there is no sign of collapse. On the contrary, it is still very strong. Jiang Hai's F650 did not feel the slightest bit wrong when it ran. After arriving in this area, about 10 minutes later, an underground parking lot appeared in front of them. But at this time the abandoned parking lot, which should be dark, was brightly lit. Countless cars and people were celebrating here at this time. When Bavatar Jindurat and Jiang Hai's car entered, it also attracted some people's attention, especially Jiang Hai's F650. It was really a bit, not suitable here. The cars here were basically some small cars, modified cars, and almost no SUVs. When Jiang Hai's pickup truck appeared, it was really a bit confusing. What the hell is this? And while they were looking at Jiang Hai's car, Jiang Hai was also looking at these people in the car. To be honest, these people were the so-called delinquents. They looked young, about 25 or 26 years old. The oldest was estimated to be in their early 30s. There were black people, white people, and very few Asians. At this time these people were all dressed abnormally, weirdly. For example, in this April some people were wearing mink fur and sunglasses in the dark. That big gold chain could be used as a dog leash. Their hairstyles were also colorful and messy. They hugged those scantily dressed women and sat on the hood of their car to flirt. Some people could not stand it and had already gotten into the car and kissed there. It was probably because Jiang Hai and the others had arrived early that they had not directly started the fire. But looking at this scene, it would probably be soon. Glancing around, Jiang Hai's first reaction was that there were no good people here. Finding the empty spot where they usually parked, Bavatar Jindurat and the others parked there. Jiang Hai's car was also parked next to it. Then everyone got out of the car. But just as they stood still, a black man wearing mink fur with his arms bare and a pair of sunglasses and a head like a pheasant's with 3 different colors swaggered over. "Yo man, are you here to play today? Are you kidding me? Listen to this scream, don't you understand? There is no rice bucket here. You drove a pickup truck but you didn't swipe your card. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yo." After the black man walked in front of Baveda Jindurat and Jiang Hai, he began to speak while swaying. Rather than speaking, it could also be considered as a rap. "Okay, little E, did you eat too much flour? This is my friend. I brought him here to feel the atmosphere. He won't play with us and he can't be a cop. I'm very sure about this. Do you understand?" Looking at the black man in front of him, Bavatar Jindurat smiled and threw a box of cigarettes over, and then said to the black man. After taking the cigarette, the black man glanced at Jiang Hai, then pointed at him rhythmically and then swayed away. Looking at his appearance, 3 black lines appeared on Jiang Hai's head. "You guys just race here." Glancing at Bavatar Jindurat who lit a cigarette, Jiang Hai said with an awkward smile. "Of course, although it is also illegal, at most I will be doing community labor. I won't touch other things. You know, I still have a good future." Chapter 709. His level here is not bad. It's not an exaggeration to say that he's in the top 7. But there aren't many racers here. It's not like New York where there are dozens or even hundreds of racers in an underground race. The total number of racers here is only about 30. His results are not bad. Probably seeing her boyfriend's embarrassment, Delia George stood up at this time and said to Karma Cliff with a smile. Hearing her words, Karma Cliff also looked at her. "Let me show you from a distance. Little Lewis who just came over is actually a good driver. His strength is not bad. He can rank in the top 5 but he relies on this thing to make a living. It is normal for his level to be very good." Hearing Karma Cliff's words, Delia George also said with a smile, then pointed to the little black man just now. "Rely on this thing to make a living? Oh." Listening to her words, Karma Cliff was even more puzzled. In the racing cars there are races. There are at least 2 such races a week, and each time, there are 15 to 16 cars participating. In other words, if you win 2 races a month, you'll earn $3,000. With this money you'll be able to feed yourself. However, that's not how little Lewis makes his money. He mainly gambles on cars. In a one-on-one fight, the winner takes his car. A modified car can be sold for at least $30,000 to $50,000. That's his main source of income. His main source of income is his driving force. Hearing Karma Cliff still asking, Baveda Jindurat also adjusted his mood and said. Hearing his explanation, Karma Cliff also nodded with a serious face, feeling that this thing is really exciting. At this moment, suddenly there was a roar and then several modified cars drove in from the entrance. The most conspicuous of them were the first and the middle car. The first car was an AMG. Although it was an off-road vehicle, it was quite horribly modified. Not only was the steel plate thickened, but the whole car was also made like a hedgehog. If this car was in the apocalypse, it would definitely be a good car. It could kill countless zombies in an instant, but unfortunately this car was now. If he dared to go out during the day, the police would definitely not be polite to him. The most conspicuous car in the middle was a sports car. The most dazzling thing was its small wings. It was an Aston Martin. When seeing this car, Carmacliff's eyes suddenly widened. What car is that? It looks so cool. Pointing to the car that drove over, Carmacliff asked Jiang Hai. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai recognized that it was an Aston Martin. As for what car it was, he really didn't know much about it. That's an Aston Martin Lagonda. It costs $1 million. It's a good car. At this time, Baveda Jindirat listened to Jiang Hai's speechless expression, so he smiled and introduced it to Carmacliff. $1 million? After taking a few deep breaths, the buyer looked at Edward Anderson in front of him and said with a smile, "Buy our fish? Is it still 30,000? If it's still 30,000, then we may have to deliver the goods every few days." Hearing his words, Edward Anderson thought for a moment and said, "Although this was also a business, it would be very troublesome to catch them every day." How much was the diesel? For a trip to the sea, just the diesel alone cost more than $3,000. The fish could be sold for $30,000, and the tax was more than $10,000. Plus the fuel and the money they spent, Jiang Hai only had a few $1,000s left. Maybe he was spoiled by beef, but now even Edward Anderson was not interested in fish that cost a few $1,000s. If it was delivered once every few days, it would be fine, but such a top-notch restaurant naturally wouldn't allow it to be delivered once every few days. It's impossible to deliver every few days, but the quantity we want can be increased. According to yesterday's standard, we want double the fish and some precious seafood. What do you think? Hearing Edward Anderson's words, the buyer here shook his head and directly refused to deliver every few days. He would still deliver every day, but the quantity of fish would be increased a lot. Hearing his words, Edward Anderson also began to calculate in his heart. If what he said was true, then this thing was quite profitable. After all, this was just a Western restaurant. Other than this one, if the other restaurants saw the business opportunity in this, perhaps this would be a good choice. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't seem to be playing dumb, SH-20 Clive said a name. "Karma? Your sister? I met her a few days ago, and then she wanted to see the underground race car, so I took her to see it, but in the end we didn't see it. I sent her back very early and watched her walk into the dormitory building with my own eyes. Is there a problem?" As soon as Carmacliff's name was mentioned, Jiang Hai remembered, but after checking he didn't find anything wrong. "You still have the nerve to say that the underground race car is a place where a girl like her should go? How dangerous is it?" Hearing Jiang Hai admit this matter, SH-20 Clive couldn't help but say loudly, You're right, that's not a place where good people go." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to refute, but after thinking about it in his mind, he realized that it was indeed not a good place. You're really a rascal. You admit your mistake very quickly." SH-20 Clive didn't think that Jiang Hai would admit his mistake so easily. Originally, she thought that Jiang Hai would quibble, but she didn't expect him to admit it directly, which really caught her off guard. "That place is really not a place where good people go. I know this. There is no need to have a conflict with you. If you don't say it, I won't take her there in the future. Of course, if I see her going, I will stop her. After all, we are friends." Smiling and taking a sip of the drink in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Looking at Jiang Hai's smiling face, SH-20 Clive was really angry and funny. "You bastard, you really are a bastard." The more she looked at Jiang Hai's smiling face, the more uneasy SH-20 Clive's heart became. After looking at him hatefully, she stood up with her bag and walked out quickly. "Hey, what's wrong?" Seeing that SH-20 Clive was angry again, Jiang Hai said with some helplessness. "It's nothing this time, you delayed me from going out to work." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, SH-20 Clive, who was walking to the door, stopped for a moment, bit her lip, and after saying this she pushed the door open and walked out. After watching her figure get into a blue Ford car, Jiang Hai smiled. In fact, even if he was dull when it came to relationships, he knew that SH-20 Clive was still interested in him. But just like what SH-20 Clive thought, Jiang Hai also knew that she was not the kind of person to share with others. However, Jiang Hai had unknowingly gathered so many people around him. Asking him to leave these people and go find SH-20 Clive, Jiang Hai knew that he couldn't do this, so he could only wait and see if SH-20 Clive would come back by herself. But judging from the current situation, there was still a line between him and her, but this line was not enough to make her come back. It was that simple. After drinking the drink and paying the money, Jiang Hai set off again and went to the mayor's office.